Recently, I was driving and I saw this car with an interesting bumper sticker that read, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes is better than a master of one." And this made me think, in a rapidly evolving world, we must ask ourselves, what traits do we need in order to succeed? Many may claim that technology, artificial intelligence, robots will replace us, but we must not be misled. I think that the real focus should be in how all of these changes can bring opportunities into our lives, career development, but especially how they will influence leadership. So, the question is, should you become a jack of all trades or a master of none? Well, becoming a jack of all trades can have many benefits. And let's take, for example, Leonardo da Vinci. We all know that he was able to have multiple skills. The interesting part of Da Vinci was that he was raised during the Renaissance period. During this time, there was a big emphasis in learning literature, art, and culture. Therefore, he ended up with multiple skill sets. And also, we can see his impact today in different fields, such as arts, engineering, architecture, music, also urban planning, cartography, and I can keep on going with all of his skills. The interesting thing about Da Vinci was that he was able to contribute and leave a lasting impact. In many of us, we can still see it. So, should you follow on Leonardo's footsteps and become a jack of all trades and have multiple skills? Well, we live in a world that is brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. In other words, we live in a BANI world. This term is created by Jamais Casio to explain today's changing dynamic. And I think that we all saw a little bit of this during COVID. A lot of changes that maybe didn't allow us to plan way ahead, and also it gives us a little bit of anxiety. The interesting thing about this type of world that we're living right now is that there's a big demand of becoming a jack of all trades. Why? We are in a workspace that there's a lot of hyper competition. Right now, you're applying maybe for a job. You're not only competing with people maybe in your state, it's nationwide or worldwide, thanks to the internet, right? LinkedIn. And the interesting thing with this type of things is that it makes us have interdisciplinary knowledge. So multiple skills are gonna be in demand. Therefore, we need to pay attention in what are the changes in the workspaces, what is in demand, and what we need to work on. And in this type of world, it's gonna be imperative for us to have multiple skills because it will bring resiliency. And in order to become a jack of all trades, we need to do one specific thing. Become the master of your brand. And this is when I'm gonna be talking about personal branding, which is a topic that is in, and I think that it will stay for a long time. So whenever we talk about branding, I think it's gonna be really important to go back to Leonardo da Vinci. Why? Because Da Vinci was a jack of all trades, so he had multiple skills. So I want you to think that, imagine yourself, you're Da Vinci. You have all the skills that you want to have, ready to be adapted, maybe into different fields, and these are the skills that will help you get maybe that promotion, maybe that job that you have always wanted. But here's the key thing about this. You need to learn the art of adaptation to master your brand. What does that mean? Well, for that, I'm going to introduce you an animal that has that capability. And this is when I say that Da Vinci meets the chameleon. Why? Because just as a chameleon has the ability to change its colors depending on his environment, we too must learn the art of adaptation. We can be a jack of all trades, but you need to learn when are you going to use those skills, when you need them, why you need them, and how you're going to use them. And that's the interesting part of the chameleon, and that I want you to think about. Just as a chameleon has that art of adaptation, we too must do that. And that's the goal with aiming our brand into a Da Vinci and a chameleonic strategy. For you to know that you have those skills and you will use them. And this is when there's a really easy exercise that you can do to identify your unique traits, and is thinking about your strengths and weaknesses. And whenever we talk about strengths, this is when you need to ask yourself, what are those things that I do well? Or maybe, what others say that I'm good at? Usually what I have seen with a lot of professionals and leaders is that sometimes it's difficult for us to sit down and acknowledge all of our strengths. It's easier when someone else's tells you that you're good at. But in this exercise, and in order for you to be a Da Vinci, you need to feel secure about those strengths, okay? You need to own them and to use them and show others that you have that capability. But at the same time, you need to work with your weaknesses. Why? Weaknesses are the ones that maybe if you work on them, it could help you develop a strength. Also, it can help you fill that gap. And at the same time, many of the things that I have seen is that sometimes some of us have that weakness of not managing change positively. It's hard for us to manage change or technology. So these are things that we need to think of. And I don't know if you know, but there's a big rumor that Da Vinci had a really big weakness. And that weakness was procrastination. Okay? If you Google it, you're gonna see that many of his projects, maybe they were not completed because Da Vinci was a procrastinator. So could you imagine him doing this exercise and being able to recognize, yes, I have that weakness, and I'll look for a mentor, maybe a coach, someone to help me. So this is the type of exercise that we need to do. The interesting part of doing this is that it will build self-awareness, self-knowledge. It will help you be able to tell about your brand, but especially it will bring resiliency and it will increase your employability. So we need to do this. So today, becoming a jack of all trades means becoming the master of your brand. And for me, this is a topic that is really personal because I'm a military spouse. And this strategy, I have been able to use this strategy for about 20 years. I got married really young, when I was 20. And the interest, I bet you know now my age. So the interesting thing here is that I didn't know my strengths. And in every move, we have moved from Puerto Rico to Florida. We then later went to Alaska, then went back to Puerto Rico, then came to Virginia, and soon maybe we go back to Puerto Rico. And I will have to say, and maybe while I'm talking about this, you go like, oh my gosh, she has been jumping all around the place. And maybe, yes, my resume looks like a job hopper, but I think that, you know, the military made me do that, and I'm grateful for it because I was able to identify my skills, my strengths, but also my weaknesses. I used them. And in order to do this, I was able to contribute to others. And I need to piggyback to Da Vinci in something really important that he has taught me. And there's an interesting story about Da Vinci's resume. He was not a job hopper, or maybe he was, but the interesting story about Da Vinci is that according to Mark Savanella, CEO and founder of theladder.com, in 1482, Da Vinci wrote a resume, which was a letter, right? But now it's a resume. And the curious thing about that resume is that he never mentioned his past achievements. You know what he did? That resume was aimed to the Duke of Milan, Ludovico il Moro. And the Duke had a really special need, which was security. He had problems with his security in his castle. So you know what Da Vinci did? He wrote his resume offering his services as a military and civil engineer expert in hydraulics, and architect. You know what is the amazing part of this? He never mentioned his past achievements because he knew that those other skills were not needed for the need of the Duke. And why I say this is brilliant and this is something that I have done for 20 years, because I have learned that in order to know myself, know my skills, I also have to put those skills in the service of others. It's not all about me. And this is when we need to pay attention in how we're using our skills. Are we using our skills to help others or just to fulfill our egos? And I think that we can get lost in this type of world where everything is in social media, where being seen is the most important thing. But the question is, how do you want to be seen? And this is when I believe that in this 20 years of my life, I have been able to move with resiliency. And every time that we have moved, my question is always this one: what the community needs, what organization is looking for what, and what can I do? What can I learn from them? And so far, 20 years doing this, it has paid off, I will say, especially leaving a lasting impact on others. So back to the Vinci and the importance of us putting in question and in use our skills, I think that it brings us to a valuable topic, and it's leadership. And you might say, Da Vinci and leadership, that doesn't match. But I think that he shows us a really important skill in leadership. And in this type of world, a BANI world that we're living, we need leaders like Da Vinci, who has the capability of knowing their skills, working on their weaknesses, but you know what? Especially taking part of those skills and putting them in the mission and purpose of helping others. I think that at the end, that's the jackpot as a leader. So in this leadership at this moment, what we're looking for is for leaders who have that tendency of knowing themselves, using those skills for two things: providing improvements or bringing solutions to problems. That's what we need. Because I think that sometimes we talk about all the problems and we chit-chat and we bring all this negative news, but the question is, what are you doing? Maybe we need your skill. And another part of this is that maybe you're thinking, I'm not a leader. In this type of leadership, everyone is a leader because all of you have a skill that we need. Okay, so remember that. So in today's modern world, we have to talk about leadership in the BANI world. And this type of leadership, what we're looking for is a human-centric leadership approach. Currently, because of the demand of the modern workplace, leadership has been changing. And a recent study from Gartner and their ebook, they talk about human-centric approach, that leaders must have this approach whenever they lead. And the three key factors that they have established are authenticity, empathy, and adaptability. So basically what they're saying is, we need leaders who are authentic, who can act with purpose. So this is to you. You need to invest in your personal growth, in your professional growth. You need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. And remember this, you cannot give what you don't have. So as a leader, if you don't know yourself, don't expect to know someone else, right, in your team. Don't expect to tell others to do something if you're not even doing it. So the more you know yourself as a leader, the better leader you will be. Whenever we talk about empathy, we're talking about that capability of leaders to understand others' needs and struggle with genuine care and respect. We're looking for leaders that can invest in that personal growth, well-being of their people, and adaptability. We need leaders that can have that growth mindset, that being able to view that everybody has unique needs. Right now, we are in a workplace with different generations, different motivators. People think differently. And we need to respect that, but also leaders need to be flexible, supportive, and bring tailored solutions, not cookie-cutter strategies, because everyone is not the same. So whenever we're talking about human-centric approach in terms of leadership, what we want is for leaders to have in mind that the center of their strategies in their teams and organization, it has to be the people. Today, people want to be treated as people. So we need to pay attention in how we are leading. And there's an interesting statistic from Gartner recently, and they shared that human leadership improves talent outcomes. Yet only, look at that percentage, 29 employees believe that their leaders exhibit this trait. That's a low number. In other words, that means that there's work to do. So we need to put a little bit more effort as a leader towards how we want to lead, how we want to be seen, and what's going to be our lasting impact on others, okay? How do we want to be remembered? The human-centric leadership approach, it has been created because of the changing dynamics of the workplace, but also is a contribution of different scholars, thinkers, researchers, as Peter Drucker, Douglas McGregor, and Daniel Goleman. As this leadership approach keeps evolving, organizations have to pay more attention and put people in the center of the strategy. But at the same time, as a leader, you need to start acknowledging that people need to be treated as humans. That's going to be important. But not only acknowledge, you need to develop strategies, you need to act, because we need you. So this takes us to our first question. Should you become a jack of all trades or a master of none? And the answer is simple. Yes, you should become a jack of all trades and become the master of the rebirth of a new mindset, a new brand, a new leadership that demands a human leadership approach, a skill that will always be needed. Thank you.